Amnesty International Kenya is a movement of human rights defenders that work to actively combat human rights violations in Kenya through research, advocacy, and campaigning with others. Through the Rights Click, Children and Youth People's Digital Rights Health and Wellbeing Program, Amnesty Kenya works to ensure that online platforms and other digital technologies are safe, supportive spaces for children and young people to enjoy their health and well-being and realize their human rights.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to TOTO on Video Podcast. I'm your host, and Ahmed. Now, I know you guys have missed me. I've missed you guys too. I haven't been on this podcast for, I'd say, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But I'm back, and on this podcast, once again, let me remind you this is a podcast by kids, to kids, for kids, and everyone in general. So, as usual, and never very unusual, we have guests on the podcast. So these guests are pretty experienced fellows on the topic of discussion of today, which we're going to learn as we move on with the conversation. Now, I would usually let them introduce themselves, but as for now, or rather for this episode of this podcast, let me introduce a bit about them, and then we let them tell us more about who they are, what they do, and what more they have to offer to us in this episode of this podcast. Now, on my right, we have Upendo Nawire. Upendo Nawire is a child from TOTO News, the same organization that I am in, and she's a child advocate. She's a child journalist. Sorry guys, my English. She's a child journalist at TOTO News. She's a child advocate. She's a child climate activist. She is also a game developer. She's also an author, and she's a poet. Now, I'm going to stop there so that I can give her a bit more to talk about when we come to her. Now, we're jumping over to my farthest right there at the end. This is Juliet Muiruri. I got the name right, guys. This is Juliet Muiruri, who I met today, but is also a close friend of mine. Let's say friend of mine. So, Juliet Muiruri here is an expert, or rather a very experienced person. She's a visual storyteller in the digital space. She's a digital civic engineer. And she's a content lead for Linda Data, which she's going to tell us a bit about what Linda Data is as we get to her. Now, next to her is another friend of mine, Nixon Jackton Ocheng. I got the second name right. So that's good. So Nixon Jackton Ocheng here is another experienced fellow of mine. He's a currently advocate trainee in the Kenya School of Law, and he was the former lead of AMNESTY in Kwea, I think Catholic University of Eastern Africa, right? Or East Africa. So that was my part of introducing them. Now we'll be jumping on to them introducing themselves and telling us a bit about here and there. So Nixon, let's start off with you, and then we round it up with the ladies.
Okay, thank you very much, Al. Yes, so as you rightly put, I am currently a student at Kenya School of Law. But additionally, the other thing that I did, which is closely related with this, was my role at Catholic University of Eastern Africa, where I was the chair. It was a very exciting moment. That was during 2022-2023. It was during that tenure, and I'm very excited about today's discussion and looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Koi. Formal name is Juliet Muiruri, but I am a creative professional in the digital space. I tell stories using the visual medium, and I'm glad to be part of this conversation. I'm also representing Linda Data, which is a digital campaign on digital rights, which we'll get into it. So I'm really excited to be part of this amazing group of adults and kids also. So yeah, well, excited to get into the discussion.
Yeah, and yes, as you've heard, my name is Upendo Nawire. Alamina has said all my titles, which are basically self-explanatory, but yes, I'm an author. I do poems and books are mainly concerning children and real life things that happen, including some science fiction. And yes, I'm a game developer as well as Alamin to create games to combat climate change. So look forward to that.
So, guys, we've been talking a lot about digital. We were hearing she's a digital expert. He's also a digital expert. She's also a digital expert. I might be a digital expert, but I might be a digital expert. But when you hear the word digital, there's so many things that come to people's mind, right? I'd like to hear what you guys think about digital rights or digital literacy. So who wants to start? Anyone?
start.
Go ahead.
So digital rights. I mean, let's first go back to digital.
Mhm.
Like digital inamaanisha nini? I think the first thing that comes to my mind when you hear digital and people in that context, you think of digital identities. The way tuko hapa in our physical reality forms, we also have a persona of ourselves online, our digital identities. And then we exist in the real physical world, we also exist in the digital world, and we have our digital identities there. And we have rights and freedoms and things, as you've said, security and how to be safe, but also how to enjoy yourself in the physical world. Same applies in the digital world. So it's really changing of the realms and how we have rights that will exist hapa uko na rights zako, freedom zako, and your privileges. It's the same thing that should happen online, be it on whatever type of screen, your phone, your laptop, your tablet, in whichever form. So that's the first thing that comes to my head when we talk about digital. So then digital rights, it's we go back to the freedoms and to the privileges you have on there, which we'll get into. Because I know we have a lawyer here and we have children who are people who actually exist in the digital space. So we'll get into it. So
Right,
that's
thank
the digital vibe I get anytime we talk about digital stuff.
you. Thank you. That's pretty contently based, but it's pretty easy to understand. I got a lot of information from just those few sentences that you stated there. Who wants to go next?
Okay, I can.
Go ahead.
Yes. So first I can start by maybe saying what digital is. So digital is anything that has been impacted by technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that's the easiest definition like I'll give. Then when you're talking about digital rights, and particularly now that you're talking about rights of people, you're talking about rights or entitlements that every person, be it a child or an adult, is supposed to be granted, whether they are offline. Okay, now in this case, because they are digital rights, we are going to say that these are rights that you are entitled to when you are online.
Okay.
Yeah, so they are entitlements that you're supposed to be granted by virtue of you being a person and you being a user of digital gadgets and everything, apps. So it's generally those entitlements.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
my friends is what digital rights and digital literacy in a lawyer's opinion. Now moving on to another child's opinion on what digital rights are. That is Upendo Nawiri.
I would say, okay, in my own definition of digital rights, that would be similar to how you've said rules that help us understand how we can act on the digital space, conduct ourselves, use the digital networks, and yeah.
Right, but in the digital space, there's also sorts of things under the digital rights that we're supposed to be looking into. And there's so much, right? But in terms of digital, I think there's something known as privacy, there's security, and there's freedom of expression. Now, with privacy, I feel like everyone in the digital space needs their privacy to certain like sort of situations, right? It's not every time that everyone should go snooping around and looking into what I'm doing and what I'm not doing.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone needs this privacy, right? But I think that's a very important thing because obviously everyone has the freedom of expression, right? Whether online, offline, live, or whenever, whichever time.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to know how to regulate our expressions, right?
Yeah.
Now, from you guys' viewpoints, because I feel like everyone has a right to express whatever they need, whatever they want. how are we able to basically regulate in between speaking way too much about something, speaking way too less about something, or speaking in general something that's not supposed to be spoken? In my opinion, you're not supposed to do that. So, but maybe you guys can change my mind on that. Or unless you guys agree with me.
On freedom of expression. Okay, so what are we trying to communicate? So there's information that you're trying to share to people, and in those big words, that's what they call data. So when you talk about personal information, there are like kuna 3 types. There's one that I can voluntarily tell you guys, like my name and my nickname, Koi, and I live along Oyaki way. That's I volunteered that information. It is personal information, but I volunteered it, and you have rights within that. And then there's information that can be used to profile you, like you can say your age, where you live exactly, if for things going on in the media, you can even say the amount of money you have and all these things. Then there's something called like information that's like exhaust stuff you leave. Like if you go online on Instagram and you write your address, where you live, your location, your browsing history, which pays or stuff zunacha online, that it's within your rights to share that if you want to, but then you have to remember this is within a platform, Instagram. It's not just you going on your phone and writing on your notebook. It's existing within a platform and an application called Instagram, and you have numerous applications, because especially when you're talking about being online, on social media, on YouTube, or wherever even you're watching this podcast from, they have their rules when you go into there, and how they will use whatever information, be it your name, your nickname, or even your location and where you're at. They have their own rules that said how they will use that information, going to the terms and conditions and all those things. And then there's that which you can share by yourself, and you can control how much you want people to know. So the freedom of expression is really nikubwa, and it's cross-cutting for me as an Instagram user, for the people who are using Instagram, and for the actual owners of Instagram, how they can use your information. Yeah. There are things, guiding all of those things. And it's good to know, and it's easy to know actually. It's easy to know even for a young person, because even we have 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds who are creating podcasts and sharing, their talents and their voices. And yeah, it's important stuff to know. What do you think?
Okay, fair enough. I can start by saying what freedom of expression is. Generally, freedom of expression is the right that you have to show, to express, to portray whatever you feel, whatever you think, and any other thing that you really want a third party, the world, to know. Now, when you're talking about freedom of expression, I will start by telling you, okay, probably most people already know this freedom is not absolute. When you say that the freedom is not absolute, it would simply mean that there are some limitations that can apply to it. So when you're talking about this freedom of expression, my first what I'll advise everyone is the person who has the right to safeguard their freedom of expression. Number one priority is yourself. You need to be careful with whatever you say, whatever you think, whatever how you share it. And I'm going to try and use there are some 3 technical terms when you're talking about rights, and the rights generally, the digital rights, where we are having people data. I'm assuming everyone knows what data is. Some people call it data, but it is data.
Not
so yeah. So we have the data subject. A data subject is the person, yourself, who is maybe showing an expression, who may post, let's say it was during this mandamanos, you've said something that you feel this one is affecting the economy, so you've shared a post on Twitter, whichever platform you're using. So you are the data subject, because that data, you are the one who has delivered it. The person who receives that data is called a data processor. So the data processor, for example, will be, it can be, for example, assuming a simple thing as a post. Now we are going to have, come on Twitter, we post. Now they are going to process your data. so that it is available for your viewers. Now to may post, kila mtu your discussion and go on, so people are going to see it. Then you have a data controller. The data controller can be an organization and also can be an institution. Kama the government, they can control how the person who processes whatever you as the data subject ulituma huko nje, how it's going to be impacted. And also a very good example ni which is very common with many people, I'm sure. You've thought of something and you went ahead to search something. Maybe you want to buy a pair of socks. Then when you rush to another app, you find advertisements of where you can get socks. So that simply shows you that the data you provided, the person who processed it, now the app that you gave that authority to, and the person who controlled how that information was saying that I know this person wants this, so let's share across these platforms and let's try and bring advertisement towards whatever he wanted to buy or she wanted to buy. So generally that's it. Now we're not talking about I had to explain those terms. Now we're not talking about now the freedom of expression. So what I would say first is security, personal security in all rights. This is usually my view because for you to enjoy your rights very well, you need your neighbor to ensure that you have the right to enjoy your rights. So there's an obligation the other people have to you. There's an obligation you have to yourself. And for me, I think security is very key. So I will advise that you, first of all, scrutinize whatever it is so that you can also safeguard yourself from any, risky situations that may come as a result of whatever it is, the data that you share. Yeah, I can leave it at that.
I have a quote I've remembered.
Go ahead.
He has explained it so well. Could I quote in the human rights space where it says your rights end where mine begin. So inamaanisha so you have a right to do whatever you want, but once it starts affecting rights zangu, like hawezi kuja unisukume kwa kiti, you have a right to do whatever, but once you push, then that's where now my rights zina come through. So also with freedom of expression, which is a right and a privilege, there are also those different conditions. But yeah, it starts with the individual.
Okay.
It starts with the individual.
It's pretty strong points over there.
Strong. Everything.
Upendo is not going to tell us what she thinks, especially in the mind of a child. You guys are lawyers and pretty old people. Or older than us at least.
Older siblings.
Older siblings, exactly. So your info is very content based, but it's pretty easy to understand. I'm pretty sure the viewers can understand it very well. If I've understood it, you can understand it, guys. Now we're moving to Upendo.
Okay, so on the matter of freedom of expression, I feel everyone knows that like abbreviation TMI, too much information. Yeah. So I feel like people have different understandings of what is TMI, also different understandings of how free are they to share something. Because you can find some people are okay with sharing a private matter because to them it won't affect them, whether it's brought up in the future or not. But that same private matter will affect someone else if it's brought up in the future. So a lot of these things are subjective. But you can also say if I were to give an example of me and two of my best friends from school, I have this one friend, she shares everything with anyone. If she's watching this, I love you, but you share too much. She shares a lot. For me, I'm more reserved. Unless I know someone well enough that they won't blurt out everything, there's a level of accountability that should be there. Certainty that these issues will not leave this space that I'm sharing. So when it goes to the digital space, you're not really familiar with certain people. So sharing certain private matters or things that really burden your heart in a way that is so serious, you're putting yourself out there in such a vulnerable position where you're like an open wound, free for people to either disinfect it with sympathy or infect you with bullying and stuff.
Great point.
Right. The part of TMI, right? too much information might be shared in between individuals in whichever time that comes. So there's supposed to be a sort of, let's say, a boundary or a barrier where you're not supposed to cross with the amount of information that you basically share with people, depending on how it will affect you in the future and the current present, or how it had affected you in the past.
The TMI thing, I like hizo acronyms, especially vile huwa zinatumiwa online in the digital space. And the TMI thing reminds me of now the concept consent, where you have to ask. You know, we all know this. When mkiwa mahali at an event, then you decide to take a selfie and you immediately want to post it. And when you look at a picture, the first thing you look at yourself, koko sawa, you're like, let me just post it. But maybe your neighbors or the people around you feel like, that photo haini flatter vizuri. So sometimes it's good to ask people. So concept, that's like just consent, that's like kukuliza, are you okay with this? And communication and being able to trust even your friend and communicating with her. And imagine those are things that actually exist in that whole the digital world and the digital rights, because sometimes they use big words and you can't even understand. You're like, isn't that wakubwa? No, but stuff like trust, consent, communication, transparency, those are actually the pillars of existing in the digital space. As a young person, as an adult, whether you decide to engage the digital space or not, because you can decide, okay, I'm going to live an offline life and I don't want to appear online, but the cameras all around us. So then what happens? So I wanted to bring that point to the TMI, which is a good conversation starter. Too much information, consent.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Now, you guys have agreed with what I basically said.
Yeah.
You guys have not changed my mind. So you guys agree with me. You guys need to change your minds. And what are you guys exactly changing your minds on? You see, as young children, or rather as very many adults believe, is that young children are way too addicted to social media. And perhaps, maybe, we don't know. That's why we don't know. That's why you guys need to change our minds. But then when you bring in the aspect of the fact that it affects our mental health negative, you guys get where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
So young children are way too addicted to social media that it affects their mental health negative. And since, what a huge coincidence there are 2 children here and 2 youth here. So how about this? You guys have to change our minds and say that, yes, it does. We say, no, it doesn't.
Fair enough. Okay, so I will start by saying an addiction. An addiction is any action that whenever you engage in it, it impairs you from doing all other normal activities that you ordinarily would do. So that one you have to agree, because not every activity it's an addiction or it's not. So fair enough. Then when we're talking about mental health, of course, now we're talking about those aspects that mainly we don't see it physically, but there are some physical manifestations when you are knowing that okay, this person there's kuna kitu anapitia, because for mental health issues they usually affect you inwardly more, and it is as a result of a certain activity that umekuwa ukifanya ama umego through. And so when we're talking about children being negatively impacted, actually I don't understand how you will think otherwise, because that is very true, and I'm going to give you a good scenario. Now during this period people are doing exams. I think kuna wengine wameshafunga, but people are doing for example examinations, and I'm taking a scenario, mtu mwenye anaona TikTok sana ama Twitter, Instagram, IG. So they're very chatty, they're very online, so wanaji express sana. Now during this period, the exam for instance, someone they're supposed to be more focused on the books at that particular point in time. You can find a scenario where kuna mtu anajua anafaa asome certain class something, let's say class 6 student anafaa asome because the exams zinakuja, But sa online, Kenya anafanya instead because akona too much time there, is that you find ana communicate with the peers, friends wake venye, oh, we need to read. But in the process of saying how we need to read, Kenya anafanya ni inaitwa the attention span yake iko more focused on these other activities zenye amekuwa akifanya all over again and again and again, as in kama let's say maybe ni mtu ana post TikTok videos mingi. It's an activity that you love doing, but now you are doing it too much because it has become part of your routine, to the extent that there's now this other important thing that you're supposed to do in crucial na come up sahi, which ni examinations that are time based. Then let's say umeendelea tu inaitwaje, hata I think for someone like that their attention span also will be greatly affected. Juu unaweza pata to assume I'm at home reading, so after 20 minutes nimesoma concept kidogo, nimerudi kwa simu, nimeendelea ku scroll through videos, kuangalia something to check. Then the ultimate goal ni moja, I'm not going to do well in my examinations, and this is going to affect I'm not going to do well in my examinations because I did not give, for example, a subject like maths. You cannot learn maths online. You cannot learn maths online, let me say 60%. You can only do it kitu kama 40% because the other bits of maths you actually have to do yourself. And by online, unajua kama I'm referring to these common videos zenye watu wanajua kama there are these very good Indians on YouTube who know almost everything on every unit. Unajua that kind of learning ina contribute, it really helps, but it contribute to some certain percentage to your development. The others, the man nasema you cannot do it online, is you have to actually now go behind and implement whatever you learned. So whatever I'm saying is ukisha now a certain this kind of person who umeangalia tu hizo, then let's say you're the person you are giving the scenario ni TikToker, so umefocus sana huko, hujapata ample time to really focus on the exam sana, then umeanguka mtihani and umepata undesirable marks. Your mental health is going to be affected in this way, using that scenario, because you have failed. And maybe there's now your friend mwenye pia yako tu online, but they are proportion to doing all those other things online, and at the time also yenye wameseparate ya ku do the actual studies is usually different. Maybe utasema wamepeana 20% of their time to the online thing yenye anafanyanga because they are not very, they are not the addicted kind of person, na the other 80% now to doing the actual work. The same person pia ni friends online, anamuona amepost venye actually because I've done so well this semester, this term, okay, kuna semester, my parents have decided that I'm going for a trip. Wewe ulianguka, but you're still home, you still have the resource that is the source of your addiction with you. So you can also see that but now you're not really freely now TikToking peacefully, because kuna a bit yenye imekuwa hard. Maybe let's say if I told you it was an exam that inaenda kumaanisha you're going to redo your papers, so it means kuna stress additional umejiongezea, and it will manifest. Watu wako karibu naenda wataona siku hizi ni nini umehuzunika, what is happening. So you've been affected simply because you've not done well, because you did not prepare well, because whatever you are doing majority of the time was what was not needed at that time, and what was needed at that time was reading for an examination. That's a case point scenario where I think the children agree they can relate to.
Sort of, I guess.
Yeah.
But on the point of not being able to learn online, that's completely wrong, especially for mathematics.
Yeah.
You see, okay, there's this AI company, I'm not sure which one, OpenAI, I think so. It's developed this sort of AI that is almost human-like. So when you put in the prompt of like, for example, teach my nephew this sort of unit in mathematics, give him questions, show him how to do the question, but don't give him the answer. The AI will do it in such a way that you completely understand how to do the equation, how to form equations, how to derive the formulas, how to basically do everything. And after all, it's just AI. That's part of social media. So you can't learn mathematics in basically social media, maybe social media sort of centered platforms. You're talking about YouTube, right? Indians. Those Indians, you still understand how to do mathematics from them, right? These topics, for example, quadratic expressions and quadratic formulas and quadratic equations and everything basically, let's say around quadratic factorization and everything about quadratic, the sort of quadratic topic. If these Indians can sit down for about 30 minutes, sit down and talk to you about quadratic equations, how to solve them, how to form them, and how to basically derive and factorize these quadratic expressions, and you decide as an individual, as a student like me here and Pendo, to sit down and listen to that Indian talk to you 30 minutes straight about doing this, about the whole topic quadratic expressions, you will be able to understand. You will have learned something, especially mathematics. You will have learned mathematics.
I do. I'm sure you're attacking my statement where I say you cannot learn mathematics online.
You can learn mathematics online.
The statement, actually, what I meant by that was that unaona the example in umetumia. Now you've checked the YouTube video at 30 minutes. What are you going to do to ensure that, to confirm that you actually grasp that content? What are you going to do? Because now, after the 30 minutes, what are you going to do? That is what I was hinting at. What are you going to do after the 30 minutes?
Chances are, since you've studied, si nimesoma, nikajua hivi ndo vile tunafaa kufanya. I go, let's say, to school. Mwalimu anaanza kufundisha hiyo topic. I'm like, I know this. Nilisoma hivi.
No, wait.
So even hadi kikuja kwa exam,
my issue is nimekaa chini, nimeona the YouTube video, so this is actually kitu nafanya hivi. Then how am I going to confirm that I have understood?
Go ahead.
Okay. Personal experience. This I'm actually saying personal experience. That's actually a topic I've taught myself. I've taught myself.
Quadratic.
Yes. I taught that whole topic. And anyone from my school can testify this. You sit, I don't know anyone who does not. You have your tablet there or your laptop or whatever. That's a small notebook or sticky note with you. There. They give you a sum usually. Literally in those videos, they usually give you like a sum after they explain the whole thing. They give you a sum. You can do it and then they take you step by step. You see your process. Are you correct? Are you correct? Are you correct? Where did I go wrong? Where did I go right? Am I? Then after the whole thing, like they give you several examples. Just where you do it with them so that they make sure you have understood everything. So in the end, that topic, I can write out my own quadratic equation right here, right now, and show you and do it everything and explain to you.
Whatever you and Al are not getting from a question.
Wow! Straight up.
Immediately, I do actually. I'm a digital learner because I'm a digital learner, but I don't learn 100% online. And the reason I'm saying that is because after I have checked a certain concept, what I got to do to ensure that I have understood whatever I was looking at is that I implement it offline.
See, that's what she said.
Exactly. And now whatever we are saying is that, you cannot fully rely on you just sitting there listening to those Indians and then now I'll be unless your concept now I'm very, very okay. I can actually, you cannot even go straight to do an exam that I'm very sure, because for example for maths. Okay, I can see the doubt true in your face.
I have been able to do that before.
No, okay, let me give you for example, in maths, we usually mark the steps and we mark the answer.
Right.
Exactly.
In secondary education.
Yeah. Secondary.
Okay,
secondary education.
Yeah.
Okay. I see where the confusion is coming. Okay,
that's why they're confused.
Because if I'm taking on the aspect of primary, for example, I can look at a YouTube video right now. Niko na exam at 7 a.m. in the morning. Nimetoka nyumbani 6. Nimetoka nyumbani 6:30. Between 6 and 6:30 nimewatch video mathematics. Nikasoma unit, nikaelewa, nikajua hii exam naenda kuichafua. I'm going to beat it. Nitaisoma nichafue. Nafika shule, I have an exam between 7 and 8:30. Between that time napata I've reached there, nimesoma all the questions tuseme nimepitia or rather nimefunzwa online. From that YouTube video unapata the same sort of concept questions zimekuja kwa exam, right?
Okay.
So we need, like, it's easy, unaweza pita.
Okay, so
but now, so what he's saying, okay, maybe in secondary, unajua kwanza in secondary, for example, sisi hapa tuko boarding, we don't have
Yeah.
access to
Whether we
digital,
like it or not.
right? So obviously watu kaa sisi hatuwezi fanya hivyo. But if we're taking on the aspect of primary school children,
Or day schoolers.
or day schoolers, they can't do that. It's very, very possible to learn from online and then be able to implement it, maybe quote unquote, as you say, offline, and still pass 30 minutes after watching the video.
Yeah, and then like, okay, sorry.
No, it's fine.
For something like, okay, for me, I don't really understand the like what you mean by applying maths, other than just like doing the sums. Like as you watch, I don't really understand the point of how you can apply math afterwards. Maybe if you were to say like a science,
Right.
yes, like a
The math is
science.
a science.
Yeah, no, I mean like physics, biology, or chemistry.
Uh-huh.
Something small, like maybe, okay, I do physics, but in bio, you can maybe take a leaf, you can dissect, you can cut it, you can check like the leaves and stuff. Physics, maybe look at a machine, check the effort, these things, effort and force. Chemistry
Chemistry you can also sort of implement in a context whereby, for example, RMM, RAM, relative mass, relative mole mass, you can sort of do it in that
and
context.
actually,
too.
fun fact, especially in Form 2, several topics we were taught was from using the internet. Our teachers themselves, they brought their laptop. These topics they did not teach themselves. They did not teach. There was no lesson, there was no practical. They just brought their laptop, a projector. Everyone is this way. We are there.
Just learning
We
via
are
online.
learning. Or
Juliet,
like-
what do you have to say?
So now let me change your mind. So now let me change your mind. Let me tell you. So I'll move away from the subjects in the school because we have both schools online. We have University of YouTube, blah 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 blah. Let's actually go back to the human being, to the child, and to the adults. And I'll work backwards. As a former child and as a current adult, as an adult, I have used social media as a creative in the creative space, in the professional world, in the corporate world, in the freelance world. So I know how it works in that design. And Mimi, with everything that I know, I have actually had to take a step back from social media. Yes, there are some lines in intersect na kazi nafanya, okay, yes, and also my free time, because for some people who work in social media, then when you want to go for a break, then you break on social media also going to be. So like there's a lot of things happening there, especially now in the world that we're having. The current kazi yenye watu mtakuwa mnafanya when you're old, some of them, they actually don't even exist right now because they'll exist in the digital space. Okay? So now back to the actual person. I remember when I was a child, for me to even come into the digital space with vile nasonga haraka, I actually had to do the actual physical stuff. How I pivoted into the creative digital space, I actually started in the physical world, coloring, doodling, arts and crafts, as I was telling you, all those things. And they happened when I was a child, in that age. You talked about quadratic expressions, you talked about biology, you talked about physics and RAM. In biology, kuna hizi formative years, kuna hizi adolescence, kuna hiyo toddler, whatever, baby, can even go back to the fetus and whatever. Then you have the adolescent, then young adult, all these stages, you are growing up. There are things happening to your brain chemistry, to your body, And now in the current world, I mean, if all the time, what's an education and everything, just as existing in this space, if we are all the time like this, okay, in education, okay, everyone, we have the, free education for everyone, and let's, digitize it. Okay, so what about when I want to play with my friends? Okay, let's put on the VR set and do this thing. That's how I'll play with my friends. What if I want to draw something? Okay, and I'll just go and draw using, Adobe or whatever. So everything imekuwa put in that space, into the digital realm, and then that takes away your energy or your effort or even your creativity from stuff you'll actually have to do with another human being. And at this time, remember, ni hizi formative years zako ndio unakuwa mkubwa, Because even for me to have the knowledge and to grasp everything and to know myself, self-awareness, what I want to do, what I want to love, I had to exist in a world. I had to exist in a physical world, play with my friends. I'm not saying playing is not, like, going online is not bad, but if it's done to such an extended period, mpaka ina lead to addiction. I mean addiction, and you're a child. I'm an adult and I still feel those effects. Imagine a child who has only grown up with that. I have a small nephew, and we have to cut back these cartoons and tablets and Nikulile and everything. So if for a child, at least stuff to do with consent, a parent can step in and remove the device and all of that. But then as you're growing as a young adult, teenager, and unakuwa na more access, that's when you get your first phone and nini. So if there aren't regulations, both from outside parties, from wewe mwenyewe, and remember, there are also things happening in your body and your mind that are actually out of your control. And there are people, grown-up people, scientists, who have gone in a room and designed an app. By design, it's made to capture your attention, your eyes, how you type, whatever you type, the speed at which you type, how your eyeballs move, what actually attracts your attention, then it becomes dangerous. So that's how I'll change your mind.
All right, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Right, as I'm being told by my producer and my cameraman who are behind the camera, it is time. It is finally time to sort of.
Was one the debate.
We will let the viewers decide.
Ndio nimepata point zingine lakini.
I know. I was saying I'm going to talk about positive impacts.
Part 2, click for part 2.
Perhaps we'll talk with AMNESTY and see what we can do about part 2.
Yeah.
But it was pretty nice having you guys part of the podcast. I've learned a lot. I'm pretty sure the viewers have also learned a lot. Upendo with tumesoma sana, even away from school tumesoma. Thank you, lawyer. Asante sana, Nixon. Thank you so much, Koi, Juliet, our digital expert.
And creative expert.
I am so sorry, I keep on forgetting that, guys. Now, just before we end our very podcast, I'd like to give a bit of story on history. Over the 2000 and 2008 post-election period, there had been a lot of riots, or rather as we know them now as Maandamano. And there's such a huge difference between the previous Maandamano and this current Maandamano, right? Over the past 3-4 months in our country, there's been riots. What is your take on it in terms of the riots? Please give short parting. Tell us what you know and stuff like that.
Ooh, parting shots on Maandamano.
Yes. And the protests, yeah.
Yeah, and the protest. I mean, as a young person, everyone I think right now is alive to the actual power of digital activism, like the power that this digital device holds, and why, big companies actually want you to still be on these devices and whatnot. But I think it's a time where we can really, the country, sisi watoto, the people in power, the data subjects us, we can actually, it's a time for us to be tested on, on our rights, on the laws that we have supposedly put into place to protect us, to keep us secure, to make sure we can express ourselves. This is a really trying time, and something that will actually be in history on, how people actually respond, reactively or proactively into the whole situation in digital inclusion and digital activism. So for a Maandamano thing to actually have its sparks online, then that's translating into the actual physical world. It's a thing to behold, and it really shows you the power of this. And even when now you actually go to the streets, then now your rights actually come into place. Like, are you safe online? Are you safe offline? That people whose information has been leaked, and they're not even online. They're actually offline, and they're being captured by digital devices and all these things. And we've had very nasty cases. We've had big successes. So I think it's a really monumental time to see how people react to digital inclusion, and your freedom of expression.
Alright, so I'm being told that we have less time, so please
Okay.
go ahead.
Fair enough. There's a statement: justice does not favor the indolent. Simply means if you have a right and you don't speak about it when it's being violated, no one is going to come and help you. So, young people, old people, go and in whichever way, whether physically, if you are courageous enough, as long as you go and do it peacefully, go and protest for your rights. You really should protest for them, and you should protect them at all costs. So people should not shy away from this,
Right.
online or offline.
Thank you. Brenda?
From what I can say is, in this with the current mandamanos, the way they've been using the internet, people have been awakened. They are aware of their rights. They know this isn't right. They know that they are being oppressed actively. And then the internet never forgets. So like there's something in democracy, I think it's a feature in democracy called recall, where citizens recall a poor performing leader and make sure not to elect them in the next elections. So like the internet will never forget, the people will never forget the whatever wrong that was done to them. So like in a way, the media is being used as a way to make sure that nothing like this, no oppression that the people are facing right now ever happens again. It's like a warning to both the leaders and to the next generation to come.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. Now, guys, we have come to the end of our podcast. I just want to say I am very sorry for those who had been lost. May their souls rest in peace. Be sure to check me out on my Instagram at yventure.marlin. Be sure to check out TOTO News on all its social media platforms at TOTO News. And check out our website at totonews.com. Check out Hekaya Space on YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel at TOTO News. Also be sure to check out Amnesty International at Amnesty Kenya on all the social media platforms. You guys will have a lot to learn from them, as we have learned from these from these three amazing guys. And I guess this is goodbye, guys. Be sure to check out the next episode of TOTO on Video Podcast. Bye.